How you doing? Are you doing as well as you'd like? Are you about as happy as you'd like to be? Is your life full of grace and ease as you transition from one enjoyable moment to the next? Is it filled with abiding joy, peace, and love? Do you sleep well? Are you untroubled by bad emotions? Or are you frequently upset? Are you quarrelsome? Do you usually attract other people and animals, or do you instead repel them? Are you frequently angry or fearful? Are your thoughts often nothing but negative evaluations? If you're not enjoying life as much as you'd like, might you welcome some help from me if it didn't cost you a penny? If not, this talk isn't for you. Please go do something else. If so, I have two gifts for you, as well as some suggestions that you might find beneficial. I encourage you to dream about living a lot better. If you commit to it and use my suggestions, you will. Nobody teaches us how to live well as children. A consequence is that more than about 90% of humans live in unjustifiable fear, including fear of death. It's true that most adults work on looking good and smelling good from the outside. It's also true that on the inside they're fundamentally confused and fearful. They carry that heavy burden from one moment to the next. The result is that, subjectively, their lives seem to be nothing but one damn thing after another. Does your life often seem like that? Do you often seem to be losing rather than gaining? It's not uncommon to be feeling down from losses. Our attachments break. Unless you're very young, you've undoubtedly experienced important losses. For example, a loved one dies. You lose your job. You lose health due to disease, or you lose mobility due to an accident. You lose energy and vitality as you age. You lose your house due to foreclosure, divorce, flood, or fire. You lose your lover when he or she found someone more attractive. Such losses, as they accumulate, can compound each other. That can lead to a loss of confidence, which makes everything worse. The emotional fallout that results from important losses can be intense and prolonged. We can so fear feeling bad that we inhibit our lives. We can stop growing or taking chances. When we become preoccupied with trying to avoid losses, we also lose freedom. For example, in my case, after what I thought were 14 really good years of marriage, my wife dumped me for someone else. I fell flat on my face emotionally. I'd never experienced anything like that. I'd burst into tears in the middle of the day. I could sleep for no more than 90 minutes at a time during the night. When I did fall into an exhausted sleep, I'd sometimes wake up crying. That never happened to me in my whole life. I couldn't go to a mall. Why? I'd see couples walking hand in hand and wondered what was so wrong with me that I wasn't like that. I knew there was no quick fix that would last, like replacing her or getting stoned. So I feared what the coming weeks and months would be like emotionally. I wasn't just hurt from being rejected. I was also embarrassed. After all, I chose her, and in that sense, my suffering was my own fault. Somehow I'd unintentionally done it to myself. I was confused how that happened. Worse, I had no clue how to heal, no clue what to do, no clue how to enjoy life again. My choice was either to keep lying on my face or stand up. Not knowing what to do, though, I just started doing something. I realized that I was missing some important understanding about how to live well. I admitted that I knew that I didn't know. If others could live well, and there were people who did, Why couldn't I live well too? I wondered if I was simply a spiritual zero. Could the answer somehow lie in that direction? I wondered if I needed some spiritual or meditative training. So I signed up for a Tai Chi course at a local community college. The instructor said that we needed to rebalance our chi. Yeah, right, bucko. I didn't have any chi to rebalance. However, deciding that I had nothing to lose, I started practicing daily what he recommended. In about 2 weeks of doing it daily, I actually began feeling the chi. There must be something to this meditation business, so I kept doing it a little while every day. That moving meditation led me within months to Zazen, the stilling meditation of Zen. It took me a while, but I was able to find a way that might work. I regained hope. All that took place 30 years ago and was a major positive turning point in my life. A heart-wrenching event turned out to be a blessing in disguise. I needed that motivation to grow. I certainly didn't want it, but I needed the stimulation. Have you noticed that life often seems to give us exactly what we need? I eventually learned how to free myself from any prolonged unwanted emotion. I also learned how to diminish their arising in the first place. Would you like to learn how to dissolve prolonged unwanted emotions, such as guilt, shame, loneliness, grief, anger, and fear? Fear is the fundamental one that spawns all the others. I'm talking about prolonged fear. Mother Nature gave us fear and other emotions to help us survive and reproduce. For example, if you notice that you're standing too close to a poisonous snake, fear should prompt you to jump away instantly rather than to think about what to do and decide what to do it. And decide then to do it. That's too slow. So short-term fear can be useful. It's not true for prolonged fear and other such unwanted emotions. They're not just useless, but counterproductive. Buried, prolonged emotions can leak poison into our lives for years, even decades. It'd be silly not to expect important losses in the future. If you live long enough, for example, you'll lose your health and your youth. It'd also be silly to expect that somehow, magically, you'll abruptly wake up one morning knowing how to treat prolonged unwanted emotions or how to prevent their arising initially. Those two skills about emotional well-being are skills that those who have lived well have mastered. Furthermore, living well emotionally is just one aspect of living well. Yes, emotional well-being is important, but there's much more to living well than that. Have you learned how to live well in terms of your interpersonal relationships? What about living well spiritually? It turns out that that's critical for wisdom. Also, what about living well physically and living well intellectually? What about living well financially? Being broke can have disastrous consequences. Is your life balanced in terms of those 6 factors? If so, congratulations. You're a sage, someone who lives well, someone who is wise. If not, you're normal. Most of us are not sages. In fact, on average, there's only about 1 sage in every 10 million human beings. That's unfortunate. Furthermore, it's not necessary to become a sage to live better. It's not necessary to improve everything, to improve one aspect of life. At least so far, I'm not a sage, and yet my life is enormously better than it was 30 years ago after my wife dumped me. I'm blessed to have mastered a lot about life since then. I've shared a lot of what I've learned in dozens of books, hundreds of videos, hundreds of online posts, and in my coaching. Are you serious about living better? Would you like me to share some of what I've learned about living better with you? If so, that brings me to the first of the two gifts I'm offering you. The first is Calibrations for Clients, which is an 11-page PDF if you print it out. To get your copy, just email me and request it. I'll send it to you as an email attachment. Email dennis@endfearfast.com. Why might you want to do that? You may have been or are or may become in the future in the flat-on-your-face position that I found myself in 30 years ago. You may also not know what to do or to whom to turn for help. Calibration for Clients points the way upward. Here's its two big ideas. First, our levels of consciousness are critical. The higher, the better. Second, levels of consciousness are measurable. That only became possible rather recently, and it's enormously important. Why? What's measurable is easier to improve than what's not measurable. For example, suppose you're trying to lose body weight. Would doing so be easier with or without a scale or a balance? With, of course. That's because you'll be able to tell what's working and what's not working. The fundamental problem for me 30 years ago was that my level of consciousness was too low. Since then, I've raised it considerably. You can do the same. If you do, the rest of your life can be better than it's ever been so far. The more deluded we are, the more unhappier we are. So when we become less deluded, when we raise our overall level of consciousness, we automatically become happier. We make better choices and live better. The higher your level of consciousness, the better you'll live and the happier you'll be. So, how is it possible for your level of consciousness to rise? The answer is that it will rise automatically once you stop obstructing it from rising. If so, how do you stop obstructing it from rising? You emulate those who have done it. You find people who live well and then do what they did to improve the quality of their lives. That makes sense, doesn't it? If you want to master woodworking or dancing, how? Would be the best way to do it? Find masters and learn from them. That's how mastery works. Mastery leaves clues. Pay attention to the clues and use them. Learn how to do something properly from the beginning. That way, you won't later have to unlearn bad habits. Becoming wise, mastering life, is a skill that can be learned. Calibrations for Clients will enable you to learn it from masters. You won't have to rely only on me. You'll have a choice of masters. It identifies the sages, the wise, and briefly explains how they were ranked or calibrated. Select a sage who resonates with you, find out what he or she recommends, and do it. Simple. You'll have a path upward out of worry and suffering to wisdom and living well. If you want to do the rankings yourself, it includes a free way for you to do that too. So if you want it, email me at dennis@endfearfast.com and request it. That's Dennis, D-E-N-N-I-S, and end, E-N-D, fear, F-E-A-R, fast, F-A-S-T.com. Also, if you want your own personal calibration, it tells you how to obtain it for a small fee. The more you understand about the way to living well, the easier it is to practice. The way to wisdom is simple to practice. That does not mean, however, that it's easy. So, you may want more than merely theoretical help. Understanding is good, but only if it's used. That's why I'm also offering you a second gift. What is it? It's a phone consultation with me. Why might you want to talk with me on the phone for 20 minutes or so? To get some free one-on-one guidance for getting started on the way for you to live better. I'm not about trying to sell you anything. I'm not talking about trying to psychoanalyze you or give you a lot of psychobabble. I'm talking about suggesting concrete possibilities that work to produce measurable results. There are multiple paths to living better. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation. You are unique. The way that works best for you may not be the way that works best for me. I'm talking about installing regular practices that will enable you to live better for the rest of your life. Which practices? That depends upon your background and skills. Take advantage of the fact that I've learned a lot about what works and what doesn't. Which practices will help you live better emotionally, interpersonally, spiritually, physically, intellectually, and even financially? The answers depend upon where you are and where you'd like to be. Perhaps I may be able to suggest some practices that will work well for you. Perhaps not. There's only one way to find out. Nobody can live for you. However, I'd feel good if I could help you at least begin well. What would living better be worth to you? What would living better be worth to you in dollars? The cost of a year's room, board, and tuition at a private college? The cost of a new car? A month's care in a nursing home for an aging parent? If you're willing to live a settled-for life, you won't do anything. You won't read calibrations for clients, and you won't talk with me on the phone. Are you sick and tired of being sick and tired? If so, perhaps I may be able to help. If not, you don't need any help from anyone. Hey, some people enjoy suffering. It gives them a good reason to be negative and to complain a lot. Are you like that? If not, why don't we chat on the phone? I don't promise anything, but perhaps you'll find the call beneficial. Except possibly wasting 20 minutes, there's no risk to you. It's not your fault that you don't already know exactly what to do to live well. We weren't taught in school how to become wise. They not only don't teach us how in public schools, but it only occurs infrequently. The people who earn undergraduate or even graduate degrees in college have clarity about it. It typically requires decades of experience. When you were a young adult, were you focused on wisdom? Or did you assume that living well came from drugs, sex, rock and roll, and money? Theory is learned from books and in classrooms and lecture halls. Mastering life isn't merely theoretical. It requires more than just thinking. Wisdom requires doing and being well. Once attained, living well is easy. Attaining it, though, isn't. We all need help. Don't wait to live better. You've likely had important losses before and will almost certainly have more again. Since you're in the middle of it, it's not easy to assess your own life. What are you doing well? What could you be doing better? You may have a comfortable tendency to think you know all the answers, but do you? It's more likely that you're living with an underlying sense of unease, that something important is missing, that you're not as happy or satisfied or fulfilled as you'd like to be. There's no good reason not to check to see if there's something that you're doing that you shouldn't be doing, or if you're failing to do something that you should be doing. Why live in fear that you're leading a termite lifestyle that could collapse at any moment? Immunize yourself against regret. Living with a major regret is very distressing, isn't it? That does result in prolonged distress. Why risk it? Here's another factor for you to consider. Are you familiar with the Hawthorne effect? Psychologists learned it from stimulus response studies. It turns out that we typically modify our behaviors in response to learning that we're being watched. That's not surprising, and it's an effect that does wear off. Still, it's one reason that people who want to master something hire coaches. Good coaches are also supposed to have better perspective and understanding than their clients. If you decided to take up a new pastime such as golf or surfing, would you just wing it? Or would you hire a coach initially to help you avoid bad habits and install good habits? You've been living for quite a while. Might you want to check to determine if you've developed any important bad habits or failed to develop important good ones? I know what I'd do. I'd learn from masters. There's good news about that. You can learn from Calibrations for Clients how to do that without spending a penny. You can also chat with me on the phone without spending a penny. If we have a good rapport and are a good match, perhaps you'll even want to hire me as a coach and I'll want you as a client. If not, though, I may still be able to point you in a fruitful direction without you spending any money. By the way, what's the most important criterion you should look for in a coach? It's that coach's level of consciousness. Many people understand the importance of good coaching, but few understand how to determine a prospective coach's level of consciousness. If you want, you'll learn more about that from Calibrations for Clients and the phone call. As you may imagine, learning how to calibrate that level in others is itself an important life skill. We all do it informally and haphazardly anyway. It's now possible to do it well. I'm able to do that and might be able to teach you how. Someone's overall level of consciousness is the most important fact about that person. Yours is the most important indicator about the quality of your life. For example, it indicates whether you ultimately live in love or fear. For example, it indicates the degree to which you suffer from delusion. And everyone who is not yet a fully enlightened sage suffers from some degree of delusion. The more we're deluded, the more separated we're from apprehending a reality. The more difficulty we have apprehending reality, the more difficulty we have living well. Would you like to have a crystal clear vision of what it would be like for you to live better? Would you like to uncover hidden challenges that may be sabotaging your quality of life? Would you like to become more inspired and re-energized to improve the quality of your life? If you've answered yes to any of those three questions, request calibration, and then let's talk. We are temporary forms like soap bubbles. It's natural for them to pop out of existence. Death is as inevitable as it is natural. I enjoy helping people live better. However, at 78, I won't be doing that much longer. Don't miss this opportunity. Might I be able to help you? Let's find out. Email me at dennis@endfearfast.com to request Calibrations for Clients. If after studying it you'd like to talk on the phone, email me again if you want to request a consultation. Simply mention that you'd like us to talk and give me 3 times that would work well for you. I'll get back to you soon, usually within 24 hours. I'll give you my phone number and we'll set a mutually agreeable time. If you prefer Skype or Zoom, we could connect on one of those if you'd much prefer it that way. I enjoy talking with people about wisdom. I've spent my career doing it. So if you'd like my take on how you might live better, that's the procedure. Again, dennis@endfearfast.com. I wish you well. Peace.